Hello and welcome to another edition of the DC Capstone Report podcast. Well, welcome all of our listeners out there. It's great to have you tune in each week to listen to us talk about Alabama football. I want to thank Lance Shores. I haven't thanked Lance enough in the past couple of podcasts, but Lance does a great job of producing everything and getting some great pictures up there while the podcast is going on. So I really appreciate the job Lance is doing. If you hadn't had a chance, check out Lance's other sites at rolltidebama.com and freelancepictures.com. You get great videos, a lot of great Alabama content, and a lot of other pictures that Lance taking. He's a great photographer, great videographer, and I really appreciate the work that Lance does to help us with this podcast. Well, today on the podcast, in our first segment, we're going to take a look at an update on Coach Saban's surgery that happened yesterday and talk a little bit about that. In our second segment, we're going to look at what does Alabama football need to do to improve over the summer going into fall practice. And finally, in our third and final segment of the day, we're going to take a look at the upcoming NFL draft that's scheduled to start on Thursday, the 25th, and see exactly where some of the Alabama players might fall in the draft.
The DC Capstone Report is featured each Tuesday morning on Tide 102.9, The Morning Blitz with Martin Houston. You can listen live at tide1029.com.
Well, as many of you know, Coach Saban had surgery. He said right after the spring game that his hip was bothering him to a point where he felt like he wanted to get it taken care of. His exact words were he didn't want to coach one more year at Alabama. He wanted to coach many more years at Alabama. And his hip was causing him a little pain and discomfort. He had his surgery yesterday, and I'm pleased to report that surgery was successful. Based on a press release that was issued by Dr. Lyle Kane, the sports medicine clinic there, he was able to have a robotic-assisted hip replacement surgery yesterday. Looks like Coach Saban is resting comfortably. It was a complete success. He should be able to walk in a couple of weeks. And then they said they'd have him back to his normal activities. He'll be back in the office in a week or so. And I don't think he'll be able to miss much. A couple of things that we do know of that are coming up that he'll miss. He'll miss his annual visit to the draft that's coming up on Thursday the 25th. So he won't be there in person to see the Alabama players get drafted due to this hip replacement. And I also heard today that he and Mark Ingram, his golfing partner for the Chick-fil-A preseason golf tournament, have had to withdraw from that tournament due to the fact of his recovery from his hip surgery. But it's great to know anyone who goes into surgery, there's a risk involved, and it's great to know that he came out of this surgery with a complete successful surgery. This will get him back, and hopefully he'll be ready as he starts fall practice this summer, getting ready for our team to go into the fall. But I don't look for him to miss too many things other than those two things that I've just mentioned. Looks like he'll be back on back in the office and working. And it's hard to keep Coach Saban down. He's really good at getting in there and working every day. And I just look for him to get back as soon as he can. And we got some of the best rehab specialists in the nation working right in the building that he works in. So I'm assuming he'll be able to do his physical therapy here and continue the road to recovery. Just glad that, as all our listeners out there are, that Coach Saban had successful hip replacement surgery yesterday. Well, in our second segment, we want to take a look and expand on a topic that we talked about in our last podcast. That is, what does Alabama need to do in this offseason between spring and summer practices to improve? And we talked about several topics. One was we need to make sure that we don't hear anybody's name in the news during this period of time. Well, what do we mean by that? Well, we hope that the biggest story of this offseason is Coach Saban's hip replacement surgery that we just talked about. We hope that's the biggest story. By that we mean that no players need to get in trouble. We don't need any Alabama player out there in trouble or anything. So if we keep our noses clean is the first thing that we need to do going between spring and summer. And the reason we say that is, I think that'll be an indication of whether or not we got back to the old Alabama way in our discipline and our leadership on the team. That's something that's important. If you can keep your nose clean when you're outside of the purview of everyone here at this capstone, and do the things you need to do, and do them right, then your name doesn't get called in the press for something that goes wrong. So that's the first thing. Second thing is we need to come out without any injuries from the spring game and not have any injuries on the off season. Guys like to do things at the beach and go boating and riding wave runners and playing basketball and get with their old guys, with their old pals and playing pickup games, that sort of thing. We don't need any off the field injuries to harm us in any way going into the offseason. We need to be free from injuries. And the third thing is what I want to expound on, and that is we want to know what are the players doing during the offseason to get better. I take a little tidbit from our new basketball coach, Nate Oates. One of the things that Nate Oates said in his press conference when he took the job at Alabama as a basketball coach, he said that you don't win the national championship in practice every day. There's not enough time to do that. You got to have players who are disciplined enough to, on their own, want to improve their individual talent on a daily basis. In other words, they're in the gym working on their own. Well, I think that's a real big test of a football program to see if Alabama has gotten back to the Alabama factor. And what I mean by that is between the time when you leave spring ball and you come back in the summer, what have you done individually to get better? What have you done to improve? A lot of times you see players come in overweight, out of shape, with come back in summer. It takes a while to get back into playing shape. And I think this Alabama team, if we're going to be successful, we need players to buy into the process and to work out on their own, throw with their teammates, continually to work out on their weight room, and continue to do voluntary workouts with when they're away this summer, if they go back home, whatever they need to do to get better, and that's important. I think if we do that and we come back and we get our first couple of practices on our belt in the summer, then I believe we're going to see what kind of team we have. I think coming out of the spring ball, we want to emphasize, the Alabama factor and getting back to the process. And I think coming back in the summer will be an opportunity for our players to show that they've done the work. Have they put the work in over the summer to come back in better than they were when they left in the spring? You don't want the complacency to step in and say, hey, I did a great job, great in spring. You want the work ethic to kick in and say, hey, I can be better. I can do better. And if each individual does that, I believe we'll have a great team coming into the fall practice. And the final thing we said was, how are the coaches? Well, are the coaches going to gel together? All these new coaches are going to gel together over the summer. I would hope that they gel together over the summer and they come back between spring and summer and come back into fall practice with a good game plan of how to get their offensive end, their defensive end to the game plan into the players in a way that they can understand. So I look for those are the things that I think Alabama can do on an overall picture to do better. And fifthly, the one thing I want to last thing I'll talk about in doing this is what area can we improve to be a better team than we were last year. I think the one area that we need to improve the most in is our running game and our offensive line run production. I believe there was a time in Alabama football where Alabama imposed its will on the other team by running the ball when the other team knew we were going to run the ball and could still pick up that 1, 2, 5 yards that we needed whenever we needed it. And I think that was lacking from last year's team. I believe we were in a position where we were relying on Tua to throw the ball so much. We got with the RPO scheme and got away from the downhill blocking, and we got away from the running the ball. I believe if we go in, come in off of this spring practice and kind of go into the summer with the idea that we're going to run the ball to set up the pass, and therefore put an emphasis on our running game, I think you're going to see a much improved Alabama team. Now, many of our listeners out there can remember the teams I'm talking about. You don't have to go far back to 2009, the championship season, when we beat Texas for the first championship under Nick Saban. There were games that Alabama completely imposed its will on the other team running the ball, and you remember those games. One comes to mind. There was a series in a game in the second half against South Carolina where we lined up in the Wildcat. And when we lined up that Wildcat with Mark Ingram, we were saying, hey, we're going to run the ball. And not only are we going to run the ball, we know we're going to run the ball, but we're still going to run it down your throats, and we're going to win this ball game because of it. And I think that was Mark Ingram's defining Heisman moment in that season, where he just took the ball and ran for over 200 yards in that game, and they couldn't stop us. I remember there was a time against Georgia in an SEC championship game where we gave the ball to Eddie Lacy, and he just ran over Georgia in that game and gained yards. Even when they felt like they had to stop, he could gain yards. that carried over into the championship game against Notre Dame. In the national championship game, we probably played our toughest defense in Georgia in the SEC championship game, beat them, and then we go into the to Notre Dame game when nobody thought we could win, and we just go in there and thought, hey, that defense that Notre Dame has is great. They're going to just really stop our running attack. And we took that for granted, and we imposed our will on them and ran on them from the first whistle to the end of the game. And so that's the kind of we need to get back to. We need to get back to Alabama football running the ball. And I believe if we do that over this offseason, coming into the summer, going into fall games, if we can establish that run, get back to that old-fashioned Alabama football to establish a run, impose our will, run when we want to run, I believe it will be a great improvement, and we'll have a great offensive team. When I say that, I don't mean discount the pass. When we get to a point where we can run on anybody, any place, anytime, that only makes our passing level better and greater opportunities for passing the ball. Running the ball to set up that play-action passing will give us so many opportunities for big plays and scoring to our wide receivers who have the best talent, I think, in the nation. And we can really take advantage of that if we can run the ball whenever we want to set up that wonderful passing. So that, in my mind, is what we need to do coming off of our spring practice. Get better, get ready to be out there, be free from injuries, keep our names out of the papers, and work on our running game and our coaches gelling to a point to put the best team possible on the field as we come back for our summer practice going into the fall, this next fall. Well, finally here on the third segment, I want to take a look at the upcoming draft that takes place on Thursday. Alabama has got another great showing in this draft. I think it could be one of the best top-heavy draft classes of Alabama in quite some time. I know we've set records in the past, but it's been a while since we've had an Alabama football player in the conversation for the number one overall pick in the draft. Now we've had the number one type of player pick, but not the number one overall pick in the draft. So this year, Quinnion Williams is being talked about by some of the mock drafts as being the number one pick. Now I don't know if he'll go number one or not, but I know he's probably going to go in the first 1 through 6 teams out there. I know that it'd be hard for me to see that he could get below the 6th team and not hear his name called. I don't see him falling. He to me is probably one of the best well-rounded players in this draft. Defensively, I don't think there's anybody better than him. I know I wouldn't take a chance on anybody other than Quinnion Williams because if I need a defensive player, I want him on my team. There's some questions of whether Kyler Murray is going to go first, whether Dwayne Haskins is going to go first. Is Arizona going to take a quarterback, or are they going to trade down, take a defensive player, keep Josh Rosen they traded up for last year? I don't know how that's going to all shake out, but I do know this. Quinnion Williams, I think, is by far one of the best Alabama players that's ever been taken in any draft. And I think that he is going to, whoever he picks him, and I suspect he'll be picked, early on. Whoever picks him, they're going to make a really change. He's going to change their defense. And why do I say that? We saw Aaron Donald this past year emerge as a great defensive player from the inside. Used to be the inside rushers were just run stoppers. They were heavy, big players, wasn't very athletic. But now we see the change in that. And it needs to be a change because of the quick release of the NFL quarterbacks getting the ball out of the pocket so in a hurry. What's happening is you need players, their edge rushers are getting there so fast because that's where your athletic rushers are, that they're getting the ball off in a hurry before the rushers get there. Well, if you've got a rusher coming up the middle like Aaron Donald did last year, he can really have a field day with the centers in the NFL who have to concentrate on making the play calls and getting the ball to the quarterback. I don't think they're up for the quickness and the athleticism of people like Quinnion Williams. So that's why I say he has a place in this draft to be so high and to make a showing where he can be an all-pro at some team down the road. So whoever gets him, they're going to get a great player in Quinnion Williams. I haven't talked about how great of a kid he is, but just as hearing his backstory and what he can accomplish, I think his whole family, the whole family of Alabama football fans will be appreciative of Quinnion Williams. He'll do as well as he goes in the NFL. I think he'll be the first Alabama player off the board. The next Alabama player I think you'll see go off the board will be Jonah Williams. I think Jonah Williams is an offensive tackle. There's been a lot of question about his arm length and is it an inch too short or half inch too short or whatever. I don't think all that's going to come into consideration. He's going to go to a team that needs a good offensive lineman. I think he can play anywhere across the line. His preference is tackle, but I think he can play anywhere, and I think he's going to go maybe as high as 7th, 8th, 9th, or 10th, maybe in the teens, early teens, that he'll go in the draft. So he's my second Alabama player off the board. My third Alabama player off the board, maybe a surprise to a lot of folks out there, but not a surprise to me. I've been high on Josh Jacobs since he came to the University of Alabama out of Oklahoma, and I really think Josh Jacobs will be the third Alabama player picked off the board. Many people have him as high as in the top 10. Some have him as low as the second round. But I look for him to fall in that 17th, 18th, 19th player, maybe as low as 24th player picked in the draft. He's going to go to a team that needs a running back, and whoever gets him is going to get a whale of a player. I believe he's going to be an immediate impact on the offensive side of the ball based on his running ability to block out of the backfield and catching the ball out of the backfield. So those are my first three players for Alabama off the board. That's Quinnion Williams first, Jonah Williams second, and Josh Jacobs third. Now, the next gets a little different as to who might come off next. And I think it may be by needs, but I believe either late first round or early second round, you'll see Mack Wilson come off the board as a linebacker. I think he has a lot of skill. There's a lot of upside to him. Some of the scouts have him middle second round, maybe third round based on his measurables, but the kid's got a lot of heart. I think if you need an inside linebacker, he's one of the good ones to pick in this. So I see him coming as the fourth player off the board for Alabama. The fifth player off the board for Alabama, I think it's going to be Damian Harris at the running back position. Now, that may be as late second round, early third round. I'm not sure exactly where he'll go, just depending on the need there for running backs. But I think he's one of the top running backs in this class, and Damian Harris is going to make somebody a great player as well. The next player I think coming off of Alabama, coming off the board from Alabama, would be Deontay Thompson. Deontay Thompson, I think, in some scouts' minds has fell. I'm not sure why. His draft stock's kind of fallen. He may be late third round, early fourth or fifth round guy based on some of the projections. But I think he comes off long kid, athletic, real fast, got a lot of range to get back from sideline to sideline. He's the kind of safety that you want in the NFL. Hard hitter, not afraid to come up and stick his head in and make the tackle. So I think he comes off the board as well. And then you have some other players. The question, are they going to get drafted, or do they want to get drafted that later, or do they want to be free agents? So you got here on the defensive side of the ball, Christian Miller and Isaiah Buggs. They could be drafted in the 5th, 6th, 7th round range. Both of them good players. On the offensive side of the ball, you got Ross Piercebaker, could be drafted. He could be a free agent. And then you also got Savion Smith, who's on the defensive side of the ball. He could be drafted or could be a free agent. The only other guy that I haven't talked about yet is he's going to be drafted. I just don't know where to put him, and that's tight end Irv Smith. Irv Smith, I could see him going as a first-round pick. A late first-round pick to one of these teams who really need the tight end. I think it's all about need. I can see New Orleans picking him up maybe in the second round. Tampa Bay maybe. Somebody who needs a tight end. Irv Smith is going to go. So I left him out for last because I think he has been the one that some draft, your draft gurus have him going late in the 4th, 5th, 6th round. Some have him going in the 1st, 2nd round. But I believe he's going to be drafted. If he goes in the 1st round and Mack Wilson slips up in the 1st round, you could have a lot of Alabama players sneak in there and go 1st round. But I think overall you could see 4 or 5, maybe 6 players go in the 1st and 2nd round, maybe 7 from Alabama. It's going to be a good draft. The only thing that we're missing is Coach Saban, as we talked about earlier. He won't make this trip. But there's been a lot of talk about players drafted under Coach Saban. I mean, you talk about his first year, 2008, 0 players drafted. And, man, there has been a run of players drafted since 2008 from the University of Alabama. Now, I don't look for this year to be any different. I think you could have a whole slew of players drafted. And not only drafted, but make it and do it and make great players in the NFL. So I look to be another great year for Alabama football in the NFL draft. Well, that's all the time we have for this time, folks. We thank you all for listening in. Again, let me remind you to check out Lance's other sites, RollTideBama.com. Check out his freelancepictures.com. Both of those sites are well. Also, check me out on the Martin Houston Show on 1029 The Blitz in Tuscaloosa's radio station. You can get it at 1029.com. You can look us up there. We're on Tuesday morning. Every Tuesday morning we have a show. As a guest there on the Martin Houston Show. It begins at 6:15. The show begins at 6, but our spot usually starts about 6:15 every Tuesday morning. Thanks again for listening. We're glad that you're a loyal listener to the DC Capstone Report. We're going to take some time off for a few weeks as we get back into. We'll be coming back in with some reports. They won't be every week, but we'll have some reports as things come up in the weeks ahead leading up to our first summer practice. Signing off from DC from the Capstone Report, signing off.